Welcome to episode 23 Indie Creator Exchange podcast interview with Tom Chillemi from Bethany Beach, Delaware, Comic and Games, Azure Publishing, and comic book writer. So, this is going to be a really deep, if I might say, interview for all that you've been getting into since 16 is what you told me, Tom. But before we get into it, Tom, thank you for jumping on and being with Jake and I today. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me
Yeah,
on.
you're welcome. You're welcome. The first thing we do want to get into is you're our first guest who owns a comic book store. And I'm just going to come right out and ask you is how are you surviving?
It's not just one. I currently have three.
Oh, wow.
So it's three times the amount of headaches, as you can imagine. So the thing about comic books and about retailing, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't really matter what the economy is. You just have to understand it and you have to adapt to it and you have to change. Post COVID, we had a spike in old books and in keys, but we also had a change of one distributor that dominated the market for 30 plus years to now we have four different distributors, and it's changing. I mean, Boom just got bought by Penguin Random House, so that's changing everything yet again. But going back to surviving is you have to have an understanding of dollars and profitability. So I always say three things that grow a store: you need generational, you need affordability, and you need profitability. Most stores go away because they set margins on product that can't sustain their bills, can't sustain their rents, their employee costs, whatever it is. And we all know the thing that's said everywhere. Oh, I can buy this cheaper online. You can buy everything cheaper online, but you're not going into a McDonald's and saying, "Well, I could probably buy this hamburger for 30 cents on Amazon. Why don't you charge me 30 cents?"
Right.
And if you build your store based and start a community of people that want to support you and grow, they understand that sometimes they are paying a little bit more than they can pay deep discounters and stuff like that. But the feel, I say I want my stores to be like Cheers. Everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
I want to talk to my customers when they come in. I want my employees to not just know their box number if they're a subscriber. I want them to actually know their names and have conversations. I don't believe in hard selling. I teach my employees never ask a customer when they walk in, "Can we help you?" Because the automatic response is like defense, no. Let somebody browse, greet them, say hello, and just ask them what they're interested in. Hey, are you a Batman fan? Are you an Avengers fan? Or whatever they're looking at? Or are you an indie? Do you like the indie black and whites? Do you like the independents? Who get them talking about what they're passionate about. Ultimately, being a retailer, and one of the reasons I do this is that it's such a positive thing. I mean, when people come in the store, they're happy, they leave happy, and it's again, go back to passion. It's a shared passion with a father and a son, a bunch of friends, an uncle or an aunt that drags a kid into a store for the first time, and
So
and I
Tom,
go back to Yep.
um, so this is our first time. You're a creator, but you're also a retailer. So I have this curse where I live by the one of the biggest malls in the country, and inside this mall, it's called the Palisades Mall. And inside this mall, there's a store called Newberry Comics, and
Okay.
when I go in there, so my brother who loves me gave me a $200 gift certificate for my birthday like a year ago. And my problem is when I go into Newberry Comics, I still have that $200 gift certificate. I think I spent like $9 so far. I just There's nothing I want to buy. There's nothing in there for me. They have all the new comics, up on the wall, and then they package like some old comics like in grab bags, and there's all these graphic novels on the wall that are all just sticking spine out, and there you can't see anything. As soon as you walk in, there's all this manga, which all the kids are buying. But then everything else is like sweatshirts and vinyl records and plushies and toys and socks and merch. And I just feel like I'm lost in there because I worked at a comic book store when I was a kid. And that was like the proverbial kid in the candy shop. I was 12, right?
Right.
And I was just reading comics all day. I was couldn't wait to people to come in and talk about comics. I couldn't wait for the new comics to come in. I told Kurt the story that, Chris Claremont walks in one day, and I literally I'm so embarrassed what I did. Kurt, you remember what I did?
No, I don't want to say.
Got on my, I got on my hands and knees and I kissed his feet.
I
I
didn't want to
mean,
say.
Oh no.
I was 12. I don't think I literally kissed his feet, but I did the motion like, "Oh, you're
Right.
so great." Yeah. And we met Bill Mantla. We met a lot of creators. Used to come in there back in the, I guess this was the early '80s. So um what you're talking about is what we need. It's like, you walk in, how you doing, people, oh, your thing came in. I asked Newberry Comics if I want to order stuff out of Diamond Previews, or if I want you to get me an indie comic, will you order it for me? And they're like, no, we don't do that. These are minimum wage employees that are blasting music that nobody likes. And you're in a mall, you're in the giant mall, so it says it
Right.
all. What is up with that? This kind of like corporatization. Like, are these chains actually? I mean, because this is your competition, right? Nationwide, it's like there's ma and pa stores, and then there's these big chains. So what's the dynamic between being a real person, a real comic lover, and these basically these giant vending machines? They're basically just vending machines.
Right. Well, I can tell you, as in the last 30 years, my first store was in a mall, and then my second location I opened was in a mall, and then uh, in the last decade, I had a mall store for about another mall store for about 7 years. Malls are completely different animals. They are not the best for a traditional comic store. The fact that the store doesn't have back issues, not only are they losing what will probably pay their rent, and in terms of profitability, they're definitely doing. I would consider that wrong. I do want to reiterate and go back, because you brought up competition. I actually don't believe in competition. Um, when I bought my first store, the town I was in, there were five other stores that were selling comic books. Some focused more on sports cards, but they had comics, or whatever it is. I believe if you have something that works, and you put energy out, and you create an inertia to build your community, and you keep doing that, that will ultimately just continue to grow. When you start worrying about what everybody else is doing, or what are they doing that might take some of my business, or that, then you're losing what you've used to grow your business in the first place. Um, I In Virginia, where I started with most of my stores, even though I have two in Delaware now. Um, I would talk at the community college about entrepreneurship and
Huh.
small business, and the time frame I was doing it was right after Borders collapsed, and I used Borders as a prime example. And I'm like, this was a store and a chain that dominated the book market, and everybody's like, oh, they went away because of Amazon. I was like, no, they went away because they lost focus of what they did, which was nice presentation, front faced books,
Yeah,
not all bookcased,
yeah.
which is important. All
Yeah.
my I hate bookcases. I
Spine.
have a couple, but I don't try to use them. I think comics and trades, or even manga or whatever, like, you want to see the cover. I mean, it's art, and it should be. But going back to Borders, they were so worried about Amazon and e-readers and all that sort of stuff. They spent all this money to develop all this stuff that wasn't the core of their business, and I feel like that is why they went down. if you spend 100 million developing the Nook and adding a cafe and doing all these different things instead of having a good selection, uh, well curated to know the current markets and presentation, they just lost what made them different and special. Um, and what I would ask the students in the class, I was like, "How many places can you get the New York Times bestseller?" And they'd come back, "Oh, there's a Barnes and Nobles, or there's a Books a Million, or a Crown Books, or whatever it was," and they would name like three or four. And I'm like, "Yeah, but in a 15-mile radius from this campus, there's over 35 places you can buy the New York Times seller, and they're bestsellers." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "You've been in a grocery store,
Yeah.
you've been in a 7-Eleven,
Yeah.
you've been in a gas station, like." The bestseller racks are everywhere. So going to a Borders to get, some of the hot books weren't necessarily the way to do it because they were available and they weren't doing anything. Now, if I was Borders during that time with all the stuff and I had that much money, I would have said, "Hey, Tom Clancy, hey, Stephen King, here's $10 million, and we're doing an exclusive book for, Borders, and do it that way. And you're
Oh,
gonna
wow.
sign at 50 locations or whatever."
Yeah.
Like they just
Great
lost
idea.
what made them special, and that was because they were so worried about competition and worried about everything else that others were doing. They just lost their focus.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
so
That's an interesting
I
analog.
can't speak much for. Go ahead.
I said that's an interesting
Sorry.
analog to what Netflix did. Rather than just be a channel providing other people's content, they started to develop their own content. Then Apple follows suit, and Amazon Prime, and now they're all doing it, right? So that's
Yep.
a yeah, that would have been a very interesting thing. I mean, Kurt, you mentioned a couple times that sometimes these big chains get these exclusives, right? And
No,
you
no,
know,
no, no, no. It's I and Tom. This is a really good question for Tom. Is when like a Kickstarter is going and it's got a like, let's say it's got a decent kind of following because it does have somebody with their name on it. They will do variant covers exclusively for stores. Am I correct on that? Like, is that
Yeah, there. Most good Kickstarters, they have some package where they take care of all retailers
okay?
at all different
Right,
levels, because if they care about retailers, which they should,
right,
they want to be able to reach out and to provide it. The reality is, as you guys know, it costs money to make
yeah,
stuff. It costs money to get it out
yeah,
there, and it's a way to actually have profitability to continue doing it. Most distributors take 60 to 64% off the cover
yeah,
price. And when you're doing small print runs, that doesn't leave a whole lot of money left over to pay for the work getting done.
mhm,
It doesn't matter if it's a board game, a card game, a comic book, a trade,
yeah,
whatever it is. So I think the crowdfundings are a really good thing for independents, and people can build a brand and do it. And the crossover is real. A lot of stores and a lot of retailers early on were like, "Hey, we'd really like to get a game. We'd really like to get this comic or this
right.
trade," and they're doing more and more of it in the probably last 7 or 8 years that allow that. And then some places they have built their brand and then they're in main distribution, and they still occasionally do it because they have that loyal
Do
following.
you
But
take
again,
part?
it's community building.
Do you take part?
What was
Do you
that?
take part? Have you purchased from a Kickstarter a 5 to 10 variant cover?
No, I've supported in the sense of like I've bought projects that I really like and to
Okay,
showcase. And I look for things that I know that are gonna be in the mass market, and I try to obviously support as much independent stuff as I can. When I'm at shows, I always walk Artist Alley and buy things that I think are unique and interesting, because I know giving $10 to $50 or something like that means a lot more than buying an extra Marvel variant for
right,
my shelf,
right, right.
even though I might sell that faster.
Right. Yeah, I
So
think one of the questions, and Jake, let me kind of lead us this way, is that as a comic book artist slash publisher, which is pretty much what an indie comic book artist is they also have to promote their work. You think, oh wow, if I go down to Tom's store with 5 copies and sell them to him, Tom's going to sell those 5 copies. is that a realistic approach when it comes to being an independent comic book a publisher or creator and interfacing with a store locally?
Well, there are certain retailers that specialize in independence, and those stores 100% sell those books when they
Oh
get them.
wow.
Oh yeah,
I
it's the local section, right? You go to comic stores
correct.
and they say here's the local section, right?
Thanks, Rich. Right. Sorry, I had to plug in my laptop. It was about to
Oh,
die,
no
so
worries, no
you're
worries,
gonna lose me
no
again.
worries.
So, so for me, when I buy stuff like that and I buy books, what I actually tend to do is I tend to have subscribers or customers. And I'm like, hey, I think you'd really like this, and I give it to them to read. And I'm like, if you like it, contact and buy directly from them,
Wow.
because it's not always just about like trying to sell and make money. Like you have to do it to pay the bills and do stuff, but like, you know, I'd rather do what I can to help out, because I've been an independent guy. I said I started Azure when I was 16, and I want to help as many people move forward as can. I mean, you know, there's a lot of guys. I mean, I look at like the Small Press Expo of who I was with and who was coming up at that time and what they're doing now, and like just super impressed of success of a lot of my friends. And I understand how hard it is to make it and to break in. You know, the big companies flood the market, not with quality product a lot of the times, and it pushes space out. And each store is done a little bit differently in terms of um, what they can carry and what they can stock. Hey, Rich, it's in the top drawer for him. Sorry, UPS just showed up too.
Hey,
It's,
no,
you
it's
know,
fine.
Running its
it's one
You're
of
course.
at
those
the
days.
store. You're at the
Um,
store. It's great.
yeah, but my Gainesville location, I stock 660 different titles on my shelf. That's a lot
Yeah.
of books, and that's a lot of independence I'm spotlighting. But that location's been there 18 years, and it's been in Prince William, the county it's in, for almost 30. So the that community's huge, and they buy new comics. You know, a store like my beach store, or when I have a mall store, I sell back issues and I sell some new comics, and I have a little sub base. But it's people coming in and buying trades and graphic novels to read while they're sitting there on the water, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it's all depending on location and your clientele. It's hard, you know, to order just what you like. You have to order what your stores are. You know, I had one in Old Town Fairfax for a long time that was by George Mason University. So we had a huge gaming community. We had tons of people that came in. That was way more of a gaming store than it is comics. But the comics I sold there were a lot of like the pop culture stuff. Walking Dead was huge at that point. You know, things that kind of crossed over,
Yeah.
kind of like Invincible is right now in the beach store. Like that's probably the biggest book, or the boys right now.
Right. Because they have those giant mass media tie-ins, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So, um,
Abs-
Kurt, I'm so glad you brought Tom on the pod here, because here's a guy. He's an educator, right? He goes out to the local community colleges, talks to the kids about the potential about being a curator, right? Like, like comic retailer versus curator. You have a lot of people that they might not have a comic store, but they might be like a dealer that does cons and does street fairs and
right.
stuff. And in that case, you're only as good as your curation, right? You're only as good as your taste.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And and you just have to, you have to be positive about books. You have to be positive about what's going on. And the cool thing about comics in general is that there is such a wide variety of products, and there's so many things that have been published for decades that you don't need to
Saturate.
just sell what's brand new. You can sell old trades, you can sell old comics, you can put collections together, or like I put mini series together, or the first 6 issues of a title together, and then sell
Or
those.
maybe like
And
an artist
that,
package or a writer package, right?
oh, absolutely, those are definitely huge. um,
Wow.
so
We could
in
go on about retailing. So maybe we should think about the other segments, right, Kurt?
Oh, thank you, Jake.
right.
You were reading my mind because the other half of
To
Tom
be
is
continued. To be
no.
continued. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other half is Tom is a writer and publisher, and as I stated at the beginning, you told me you started at 16. So how did that all get started?
Yeah.
And I know it leads all the way up to this title. That's what I'm going to start flipping through. But this is one of your
Okay.
most earliest ones. So go for it.
Yeah, I put Accolade together when I was 16. It started in '93. Yeah, I started reading comics at 9. Fell in love with it, and I just decided I've always done art. I've always been creative, um, and I just wanted to make comics. So I did. At that time, I went to find people that were like minded at me, and there was the internet was around, but it still wasn't like it is today. So there was a newspaper called the Comics Buyer
Yeah.
Guide. Are you guys familiar with
Yep.
that?
Yes.
Yep.
And I put an ad out looking for fellow writers, artists, and I got within 6 weeks, I got I was just under 600 submissions back,
What?
and went through and I reached out to 2 dozen that I thought I liked their art or I liked what they were doing, and we built a team and we had 3 big properties. Yeah, Runaways is pretty funny. Our 3 main books were Accolade Chronicles, Runaways, and a book called Storm Rider. And we put teams together, and I had a local business owner that I literally asked, "Is like, do you have space? I want to put an art studio in your building."
What?
And yeah, and so he said yes. And I was like, "Well, how
Wow.
much rent? Like, what do I got to do?" And he was like, "You guys do art?" He's like, "I have a T-shirt company. Why don't you draw
Oh
T-shirts
boy.
for us?"
There you
So
go.
I drew because I cartoon more than I can draw like realistic. I did Frontierland was coming into Loudoun County, so I did T-shirts that were for Disney and against Disney, like same images, different like verbiage and stuff like that. And I got a studio for 2 years that just doing like logo design and stuff like that.
Wow.
And so we had this cool place that we could all meet and do stuff and create, and it was fantastic. At that time, both Capital City and Diamond
Mm.
required you to have 3 complete issues before they would solicit you before you could solicit in previews or in Capital what's called Advanced Comics, their catalog. And so all of the end half of '93 and '94 was getting those issues done of each series, and then we put ads in the thing, and then I picked Advanced Comics because I liked Capital City. They were just more independent friendly at that time. So I took a full page ad at them, and by the time that catalog came out, Diamond had bought everybody.
Oh
Right.
man.
So that was pretty cool.
Consolidation.
And yeah, I mean, it was just like great. I picked the wrong one, but I still sold. We still sold pretty well. Acolyte had a 3,000 print run, and we sold just under 2,000 copies. It was like 1890 something, and then there was like another hundred,
Yeah.
almost 100 in reorders between the two. So I was like super happy with that
Yeah.
because you have no idea what to expect. Um, and then it came out in '95, and then showed up at the Small Press Expo in
Mm.
'95, and there's some pretty fun pictures of that, especially with books like Runaways that obviously became a Marvel hit, but that's a whole nother story.
So in the
Um,
beginning, you found all those collaborators. What were the deals that were structured? Was that like you guys were all on equal footing, and it was basically just like a co-op type thing?
yeah, so we created. There was pretty much 4 of us on the writing aspect that kind of created a shared universe, and we had other books planned and we were going to do, and yeah, we put it out there, and we had obviously percentage points and all that sort of stuff of who gets what, and
Right.
artists were artists were paid for their work. Writers working more. We all because we were all kind of friends that were like building the universe in that term and the writer aspect. Jim Johnson and Matt Daniels were like my two big, partners in that. I mean, Matt's writing and designing games like Skyrim and Starfield, so he did pretty well for himself creatively. If you're familiar with those
The
games.
proving grounds,
Um,
comics are the proving grounds, and then you go make real money somewhere else, right?
Oh, absolutely. And Jim and I'm so proud of both of them because they both shared their passion. Matt graduated with an English degree and was writing giant business proposals and plans for Exxon, making ridiculous money coming out of
Yeah.
college. And he calls me and was like, "Yeah," he's like, "Do you still have an extra room? Can I move in?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, I just quit Exxon and took a job at Mythic Entertainment. They were doing a game called Dark Age of Camelot. It was one of the
Yeah.
MMOs."
Right.
And I'm like, "Cool." I was like, "You shared your writing." He's like, "No, I took it in customer service. I'm making minimum wage." I'm
Damn.
like, "You did what?
Damn.
You
Checking
just
out.
quit a job that was equivalent to today's money, about $150 an hour pay,
Yeah.
um, to make minimum wage." And
Well,
so
you're
I was
also
like, "You got
selling your
to." I said,
soul.
"We can do
You know.
this." I was like, "We can do this. I'll support you. I mean, you're one of my best friends." And I said, "Just make sure you hammer them with your ideas." And then by the time they did an expansion called Dark Age of Camelot, he wrote and designed all that, and then they did the Warhammer Online game for them, and then um, Bethesda
Yeah.
Software recruited him to do
Wow.
Skyrim.
Wow.
And so, but yeah, like any you buy, I mean, you look him up. He's done a ton of stuff. Matthew Daniels. I mean, it's amazing. I'm so proud of him. And then Jim worked for Decipher for a little while. Did like the Lord of the Rings RPG, and right now he does all the Star Trek RPG stuff. He writes all that. The Star Trek novels that are licensed that he writes. Like
Huh.
I'm proud of them for chasing their dreams and continuing to do it. And I'm happy that I played a role in that.
This is great. This is great. Like, humble beginnings, a bunch of teenagers getting together. And the
Yes,
fact is, like, you know, there's so many lone wolves out there. That's the problem. Like, if you get together with some people, you're gonna encourage each other. You're gonna expand each other's ideas. And if you're all offering your stuff, now instead of knocking on doors with one comic in your hand, you have three or five or 10. It's like multiple. It's
I I also think collaboration is important. I think Marvel was special because of their bullpen. I think having that much talent in the same room and only pushed each other to do better. The only iteration we've had of that in I feel recent times, and recent times is 20 plus years ago, was CrossGen,
Mm.
where they all got together and kind of the guy that owned it tried to recreate basically the Marvel bullpen. And people like Brandon Peterson and like I mean the people that came out around Mars, like there's so much talent that's working in the industry that did great things at Marvel and DC because they were all together and they were all like pushing each other and learning from each other, which is important because you always got to continue growing as an artist, whether it's your a painter, whether you're an inker, whether you're a penciler, whether you're doing graphics, lettering. I mean, all that's an art form.
Yeah,
And learning that and figuring out what makes it work and what
finding your
other people
role.
have done that have been
Finding your
successful.
role in a team, and
Yes,
maybe learning from the top skill. I think the toughest skill to come by is freehand pencils. And then inkers. Okay, well, maybe you can't do the freehand pencils, but you can ink somebody, right? You have good hand control. And then the colorist, and down to the letterers, and then the writer. So there's so many roles. And I work with young people. I'm a middle school teacher by day in the
awesome.
Bronx. And so I work with young people. And to me, the biggest travesty is that we don't have, technical career, based instruction, and that we're not guiding kids into these roles. All you need is one person doing, that's able to do freehand pencils, and you could get four people around them that could all have a job now, you know. But
Yeah,
instead, that one penciler is doing his own letters, doing his own colors, doing his own publishing, you know, and and and, and it could be a team, right? And then some kid who's
Yeah, I mean,
perfectly
the
capable of doing this.
teams and collaboration are definitely the way to go. You all get better and you all can learn
Yes.
things without a doubt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
So now tell us about so we've gone through your early books, and so what kind of other books have you been putting out?
so Ranger, the book that's being flipped through right now,
Look at that.
was by 2014, 2015, coming from Northern Virginia, everybody's military, ex-military, a three-letter agency,
Yeah.
a defense contractor. So you're exposed to that world quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I had a friend that joined right after 9/11, ended up on the wrong side of a mountain in Afghanistan, and a lot of his unit didn't make it. And he's a fully disabled vet now. And the struggles he's had with the VA, the struggles he's had since he's been back, and all that kind of transpired, I wanted to tell a story and make it as realistic and as authentic as possible. Ultimately, a soldier's greatest sacrifice is his own life, but it affects his families, his friends, and it changes them forever, and it changes everybody forever. And I felt like the servicemen by 2012 to 2016, like I felt they just weren't getting, wars had dragged out, and
Yeah. That was like.
it shifted and not in a positive way. So I wanted to do something for those families, and you'll see, like, towards the end of the book, suicide awareness and
Yeah.
prevention with vets is very important, getting vets the help they need.
Mental health,
um, and so
self-care, mental health,
we did,
trauma.
you know
So
yeah,
so
so Rangers, you have a Ranger team that's hunting a high level Hagati, which was the Al Qaeda network in 2010 in Afghanistan, and they go on a black op mission, and it goes wrong, and that unit, except for a guy that goes by the call sign Hollywood, survives, and there's like that page on the left there is a journalist, Rowena. We use her as a way to educate. So there, it's talking about how much money is in basically the poppy plants and basically
yeah,
heroin, and how much revenue it generates globally, and the impact, as you have a vet in the street,
both sides
shooting up,
smuggling it out, right?
right. So the narco and but we don't just talk about all the negatives. Like, there's in chapter 2 in that book, it talks about how important tea is for the culture of Afghanistan as a way to gather and communicate and talk and be social. So again, just trying to give everything as realistic as possible with telling a story. And then you flip through the one page, and the guy they go to take out turns out to just be a CIA asset selling drugs for the United States. But that's never happened ever in this country.
Thank God.
Right. So this is
So,
so is this based on a true story, or is it more like ripped from the headlines?
and so no, I mean, there's enough truth in a lot of the stuff that's there that if you dig far enough, you can find it.
Right.
There's a character, Sigger, that's later on in the book, and you'll find, and if you look at his background and things that are referenced in the book, there is a Navy SEAL that scored the highest on both physical and mental aptitudes. And he, at one point, went kind of crazy after he got honorably discharged. And he was literally like dropping in the middle of restaurants with this college girl, a college athlete, and they were robbing places and doing stuff. And they ended up killing and dismembering a couple in Ocean
Oh,
City,
wow.
and made the headlines. So I was always fascinated with them. I'm like, how can you be the top on both and fall that far to do that? Like, what is the thrill that's needed, or they're trying to
Wow.
recreate?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are back there. I won't get into too many specifics, but it's stuff that you can look into. There's real places, you know. coming up, I think as you're flipping through, you'll see, when the Russians were there, they left monuments for their fallen soldiers. There's still graveyards of Russian vehicles all throughout, littered throughout
Yeah,
Afghanistan.
yeah, they were there for 10
And
years.
everything is important. Like the logo on the book. If you flip back to the cover, if you don't mind, the logo in the book, that's a universal camouflage. And that's what our special forces wore when they were sent to Afghanistan. And yeah, they stood out like a spotlight on the side of a mountain.
Yeah,
And so they reached up to command and said, we need different fatigues. We're a liability. And the responses they got, like Desert Storm Shield type stuff, because, oh, you're in the Middle East, so it's desert, it's sand. No, it's lush greens, it's lush browns.
yeah.
It's, the mountainous terrains is not just, Afghanistan is not just a desert. And
Well,
so there's purpose, and most of that stuff in that book is for purpose. And
wow. So and so
it's heavy content. It's not,
yeah,
not designed to be light reading, and definitely not designed for every audience.
right. And that so this is co-created with real vets that have done tours, and so you get a lot of like realism in there. The art is spectacular. Is this one artist we're looking at?
So the guy who penciled the majority of the book was Jan Galino, and the inks are a couple different people, Santiago Ramos, Jeffrey Hewitt. So we got different people to fill in. I mean, it's 144 pages. It wasn't a light, small
Yeah,
book to put together. The coloring is mainly Chuck Obach and Brian Magai. And all the guys I'm talking about most of them are all Filipino artists.
right.
I've been working with them since 2008. And then I have some guys like Jaime Martinez, who does Roman Ritual, who's like a huge independent book. And Santiago is also in Spain as well. So those are kind of like my go-to places for, some pretty good talent.
Yeah, we could talk. We
And
could do a whole episode on the globalization of the market for creators and specifically artists. But Marvel has been going to the Philippines for decades, right? And
yep.
now
So
it's Brazil a little bit in there, but also Spain, Europe. What were you gonna say?
yeah, Jeffrey Hewitt, like I miss him a lot. He was like a father figure to a lot of the younger guys. He inked most of Planet Hulk. That's what he would be known
Right.
for Marvel wise. And he helped with, sometimes things get lost in translation, between language barriers, right? And he was great. And sadly, he caught COVID and had pneumonia, and he passed. I mean, it was just
Oh
heartbreaking.
wow!
It was heartbreaking. It was during all that kind of
Yeah.
craziness, and I miss all my conversations with him a lot.
Wow.
And
So
so
so this
on the
this
go ahead, sorry.
so this is like it's like a piece of history, this book, right? You're documenting
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
documenting not just the geographical area that you live in, right, and all the experiences that all these kind of people have here, but these stories can live on. And how long ago did this come out?
So we had it complete by really like 19, and then we had started to look at publishing and distribution and all that, and we had locked some things into place, and then the world
Yeah.
changed a couple months
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we got through 2020, and then so the book had been done for a while at that point, and then I printed them in 21 and got it out. And it was weird because it's out at the beginning of 21, and we're marketing it all through the summer, and then our administration pulls out of Afghanistan, and Bagram Airport, and like, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Like, it was just, it was tough. It was weird timing,
Chaotic, yeah.
to say the least.
Well, on the other hand, it all in the headlines again, right? Because most
Yep.
Americans didn't even think about it on the day to day.
And so this book opens, and it's talked about after that pullout, and they talk about all the equipment we left. But the biggest equipment, and a lot of vets that served early on, and the 2010 or a couple years prior, a couple years after, right? We had such an advantage, our troops did, because of night vision goggles. So my buddy, um, basically, he survived and didn't die because the mountaintop that they were on at night, they could push back the enemy, and the rate of casualties that they could inflict was so high because they had such an advantage. But during the day, they'd get overwhelmed because you're more on equal footing at that point.
Yeah,
And I mean, he was mortified that we just left that technology there. And he's like, not even talking. It's like the missiles, the tanks, the planes, the helicopters, they can't upkeep them. That doesn't matter. But stuff like the night vision goggles, you know, change the landscape, and to allow them to have that technology, he was
yeah.
mortified.
And I think they're, I think drones too. They got a couple of our drones, and then a little while later they got their own drones, right? So
Correct. They just reverse engineer
yeah,
it, you
yeah,
know. The one of the chapters coming up, we talk about drones, and the Afghanis call drones bees, and then talk about drone operators and the struggles they have. I mean, it's different when you're looking at blips and you're blowing something up, but the drone operators, they see stuff in high definition, and unlike a unit that's out there on the field, dealing with war and the mental anguish or struggles you have to go through, and you have a unit that's you're with that is all going through it. Drone operators, they could go in, they blow somebody up, or they blow up something, and they have to go home later to their wife and kids or their spouse or whatever, and turn it off, and then turn it back on the next day, and it's on and off, on and off. So there's a high rate of substance abuse and other things, that kind of struggles
yeah.
that come with them. That's, again, it's there. You can find it. It's out
So
there.
where
But
would somebody
um,
go to get a copy of this, Tom?
I mean, I have a pretty solid Facebook
Okay.
following in regards for that, and I'll happily ship it to them. Happily, they can order it. We have a revised like Azure store that's being worked on, that will eventually be back up. The last 2 years, I've been focusing on. I started another company called Bamco Toys with Guy Dorian Sr., who started working in the Marvel bullpen when he was 18,
Oh.
19, and we're making like toys and craziness, and these are like prototypes of like
Whoa.
that type. Yeah, it's the type of stuff we're doing, like just craziness.
Yeah.
And then we pulled, we spent about a year developing, characters, a world, and all that. And this is the complete opposite of Ranger. This is, I want kids' toys. I want kids to take toys and go play in the
Yeah.
dirt and get them muddy. There's a lot of toys that come out now that are just posable statues. They look beautiful, but they're not functional toys for kids to
No, you're
play
not
with.
even supposed to
And
take
I
them out
think,
of the box.
these are all going to be designed to take out of the box and go have fun with, and to do that sort of thing.
Right.
And that's ultimately what it is. Guy has a background in toy design. If you're are you guys wrestling fans at all?
Not
Well, we
currently.
did
I
we,
I
Whatever.
am.
But do you
I
remember?
do.
Do you remember the
Go go.
Sorry.
more like female wrestling here.
But do you remember the Just Bend'em toys? The
Yeah.
wrestlers are
Yeah.
super hot. Yeah, Guy. That's all Guy's artwork. Guy designed how to cut it, how to make them a Bend'em. Actually, he's on the patent trademark
Oh,
for that.
cool.
Like just all sorts of craziness. And then at that time he did like the Tick toys. He did toys for like the Three Stooges. I guess it was Toy Biz was the Marvel's company that was putting stuff out.
I'm very encouraged
And you
by
just
the creation of not so much toys, but like three-dimensional, sculptural, comic stuff. In the High School of Art and Design,
well,
they have in New York City, they have a program where kids learn comics, the comic trade. It's called it's called cartooning and sequential art. But they make everybody, in one, I think maybe their junior year, they make them do one of those sculptures. And it's funny because I
right.
see the spring arts festival every spring. So I go see what other kids did. It's 95% manga characters, and this whole big like display of every student's sculpture that they did that year, all laid out, and they're all doing the anime characters and the manga, but there's a few others mixed in there, and original superheroes that you think about in the round. You're sculpting them, using clay or other modeling, stuff, and it was all uncolored. But we did a show with Chance Priest, and
Mm-hmm.
we're very surprised how successful he actually is. He's selling out all of his toys, and
Well, they're
he's also
not
got these.
toys, Jake. They're not really toys. They're figurines, I think, is really how he classified it, because he hand makes each one of them. So he creates a
Oh,
mold. He
that's cool.
creates a mold, and then that is a very limited edition because he breaks the mold. So you only have, I think, 50 to 75 of them, but he hand paints them. Victory Comics
Oh, that's
LLC.
great.
Victory Comics LLC is his handle with eBay, excuse me, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And I just sent an email out to him to get him back on the channel because he is a madman and very, very complimentary to you, Tom, because of
Okay.
the wanting to make things where kids would end up playing with them and being in the dirt. And there's a story context to him. Jake found this, and I made and this is from the Dollar Tree, which is
That's
and
awesome. Yeah.
it's called Final. I am in love with this because I'm sorry that was upside down, because a kid for, I think these are $1 a piece. Yeah, they are
125.
actually. Yeah, yeah, $1.25. So, but uh, over $2, a group of kids could get these, and not only are they off and running playing wise, but there's context to then start making their own stories based on this. And I think that, and this is also pushing us into the final segment, is the future of comics per se, is as long as there's that recipe for young kids to have an access point where they're not only engaging a toy in a comic, but their immediate peers are as well. And because
Yeah.
Ninja Turtles and all of that fun.
Well, I go back to every boom we've had, and I always say boom because the Boom Studios is what spawned the last big push for comics and growth. Is you have good, recognizable um, children's content that they know, and when they see something that they know, they get exposed to a comic. In the 80s, we had Marvel doing Star Comics, and so you had He-Man and G.I.
Yeah,
Joe and
yeah,
Thundercats and all that sort of stuff. Boom did it with getting the Pixar license early on. So, when a kid that was, stuck in video games and stuck in whatever get dragged into the store, now they saw The Incredibles, Finding Nemo, all those things that they watched a million times, and they ran and grabbed this book, and it's a comic book, and then just and then that just spurred a lot of good kids content. IDW came aboard and started doing a lot of kids content. So from about 20 2005 to about 2015, 2016, we had so much kids content, and that was recognizable. And so you have kids starting at 5 to 8 years old that graduate to Marvel, DC, and then indies, and then they're reading Watchmen, and then they're finding independent books like what you guys are doing and what I'm doing, because they expand. And then now we have, in the last 5 years, we probably have the worst amount of kids products on the market, and they're like, comic sales are down. I'm like, yeah, because there's Simpsons aren't being made anymore, SpongeBob's not being made anymore, Adventure Time. So all these kids and all these shows that had been on, and what you're seeing now with the growth of manga, isn't because kids in America don't want American comics, or that style. It's because that's what's on TV that they're watching,
Yeah,
yeah.
because they're on
tie-in.
Netflix. They're re-showing, Avatar, the Airbender, or Dragon Ball Z. I mean, I had Dragon Ball Z, 25 years ago was popular, and then it always kind of stayed popular, but it was quiet. But then it was back on TV, and now it's huge. So yeah, just definitely like uh, the publishers and the big guys I'll pick on the most, they just lose sight of why they're having growth. And like, where are the, I mean, we're seeing a little bit now, but where are the Avengers and Captain America kids comics?
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing some of the Spider-Man with Miles because of the movie,
Yeah.
but it's still not enough. I mean, you should have a half a dozen comics that are coming out that should be $1 cover price.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
should
You're
be.
right.
It's an
And
investment.
the concept that comic books cost more now and paper costs more is just not. I can tell you, is just not
Mm.
true.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you that 144-page trade you're looking at for a small print run, that was the one you got was the Indiegogo one that I did a little bit of fundraising on just to print it. I mean, that thing was under way under $10 to print, and if I would have printed a larger scale like I've done with some of my comics, 3 to 5,000, it's under two
Yeah.
dollars
Jeez.
a book to
Yeah.
print. That Dream Runner book that you touched, which was a very very good. If you flip towards the end, the back, you'll see who I teamed up with because I thought it's important. There, the Suicide. I went to every major show in 2013 and passed out literature for them because it's a real
Yes.
problem. It's a real
Yeah.
problem, and it's only gotten
Yeah.
larger, right?
Oh man.
But that book on a small print run, I was still getting at 60 to 80 cents a
Oh.
book, which is nothing
Yeah.
cost
Yeah.
wise.
It's the
Like,
transportation.
and so the idea that comics need a 5.95 or 6.95 cover price, especially in Marvel and DC's, is just not. It's not
No,
correct.
it
It's not
costs
right.
more to ship than it does to print.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
With that,
but there's
with that being
Yeah.
said,
So
I could talk. I could talk
no,
for
no, no, no,
days on a
no.
we
lot
We
should.
of this
can, we
subject.
can too, but we do have to start working our way out. And of course, we're
Yep.
always going to be looking to get you back on. I and my wife visit Bethany Beach a couple times a year, so obviously part of that destination is going to be seeing you, Tom, at the store. But we got you a copy of. I sent you a copy of my Turbo Pit Fighter.
Yep.
The exchange is based on exactly that. We've done a lot of that up through the thing, but Jake and I are getting back into comics and comic making. We really don't have the pressures of trying to make a living at it, having otherworldly employment and such. But you have shared a huge amount of intel from inside the comic book store, which we can't thank you enough. But what are your thoughts? What could you let us have in the way of critique, feedback, and even questions when it comes to Turbo Pit Fighter?
I mean, you have a lot of things going on. The art is definitely solid. What I would consider easier ways to sell independence, especially black and white, isn't necessarily the traditional superhero. That is much more difficult. And as a store owner that buys it, you look for unique content, and you look for um, I mean, it's clear that this is, and as you're seeing Jake here
Yeah.
drawing, this is not um, an image cut and pasted, 4 different times in a book. It's like, oh, I've seen that eye, I've seen that head. Oh, they just reversed the image. And I think that comes through the most, that it's being done. The lettering is solid. um, I like the black and white. I like shading, and I like that. And so it's a solid piece of work. And you guys can definitely see where you guys are having
Yeah.
fun, and I think that that's
Yeah.
important too.
Yeah, I
um,
mean, our it's a post-apocalyptic thing. Our influences are Mad Max and heavy metal, and even like some undergrounds. But our kind of twist on things is our making of podcast, and it's an interesting thing we do because we know that most people are not going to sit there and just watch us draw, but we have
Right.
one guy's on doing pencils on one side, one guy's doing inks on the other side, and we talk, and we're plotting this thing out, and we talk about other things, but we're kind of documenting it because we just figure, well, we're doing this time together anyway, and we
Right.
still don't get why, because there's plenty of creators that are working on stuff all the time, and we're hearing like, some people have a Sunday night roundtable where they'll, they're
Right.
putting the final touches on the thing. Sometimes they, meet, and I'm like, well, why don't you guys just put that out, because you're doing it
Right.
anyway. Just turn the camera on.
We, I mean, you said the biggest thing is just to do it. I mean, so many talented people, and I've met a lot over the time I've done this that should have books out, whether they're a penciler, whether they're a writer. Is for whatever reason they're their own worst enemy. I don't know if it's fear of not being accepted for what they're doing or rejection or whatever, but you just have to do it. I've That's kind of always been my philosophy. Like if I want to do something, I just go and do it, and I try to figure it out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it fails miserably, but you just still to do
Put
it.
it out and see.
And then e- each creative project I do, I just try to improve on the last one before. What did I learn? What worked well? What didn't? And how do I make the next one better and just as exciting?
Yeah. Well, you really got your pulse as a retailer. You really got your pulse on things. Day to day, week to week, and then bigger trends. What's selling? What's not moving?
Right.
The difference in generations. I'm sure you see it all, and it's really interesting. Perspective for me to hear. About the creativity involved. If you're a store owner, you gotta be that curator, like a museum curator, right? And it's not just what you let in; it's also what you prioritize, right? And
Correct.
then somebody comes in, and you want to just try to, it's matchmaking too, so there's really
Yep.
a lot of creativity involved. And for I have a lot of kids that they come through my art class and they complain like I can't draw, and I'm like, well, first of all, everybody can make some kind of art, so that's not an excuse. But number one, number two, it's like, all right, suppose you were putting together a magazine, and all you had to do was collect things. Suppose you're putting together, an art gallery, and all you got to do is just find
Right.
the good stuff, right? So then, what would you say? And and you're doing it in real life. You're doing, your life and death, like paying rent, paying employees, right, doing payroll and all that. So I'm just talking conceptually with kids, but I want to put them on the right track. And Kurt, this is something that we need to do more of. Not only have Tom back and talk about his other releases a little more in depth, but also come back to some of the things, because we're really just touching on it here.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And once again, I can't thank Tom enough for taking the time to hang out with us and share. Share with everybody, because every, like I said at the beginning, and I'm speaking mainly for myself, obviously for my own experiences, but I think I feel for a lot of people is that there's that staying in touch with the comic book store locally, and how can you
Right.
do that. And I used to teach out of comic book stores. I had two comic book stores that were both 30-minute bicycle rides in either direction of where I was, but both of these individuals, very much like yourself, Tom, they always were welcoming. Hey, how you doing? Blah 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 blah. Hey, it's cold, it's hot out there. You want a glass of cold water. That type of thing. But then that question, when they would say, "What are you looking for?" I would always dream up stuff. And it got, as I got older, I used to ride the bike down and think of just crap to make up to see if they could find the comic book.
Right.
And every single time, Greg and Craig would, the next month, I would ride my bike in there. They'd have those books sitting there waiting for me, and I would be blown away. And they would reach out to Europe. Europe, and Craig actually started inviting a guy in to sell books that he was buying from Japan. So I bought the first Lone Wolf and Cub collection from there.
Oh,
But
nice.
it's there's something magical about comic book stores. I think the direction is trying to go through, and I just really also want to end by saying, I lapped your store twice, so I looked over the top. You were up at the desk. I lapped the store once. I don't see what I'm looking for. I come around on my second lap I'm looking under the tables, and I find that box of black and white
Yeah.
indies. And then, of course, I beg you to find a spot where we could take them up on a table so I'm not
Yeah,
down.
absolutely.
And not
Yeah.
only were you immediately responsive, you had a second box in the back. And then our conversation just pittered into this like, all right, you two, you got to break it up, kind of thing.
Right,
So
right.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing you again
So,
down that
so
way.
great. I look forward to it. I do have my suggestion on Turbo Pit
Okay.
Fighter. A lot of independent companies, they want to do homages to like Spider-Man
Mm,
300 or whatever,
Yeah.
right? You guys understand your heavy
yeah.
metal, your guys'
Yeah.
influences, those. I think homages of stuff like that or things that were found in there, um, I think would help you guys' audience in terms of people that really like that stuff because it looks like a book that would be in heavy
Yeah.
metal or epic
Nice.
illustrated or any eerie creepy
Yeah.
whatever,
Right.
right? um, but to do stuff to pay tribute to your idols and your inspirations, I think goes a long, long way. And were you pointing out something in particular there?
Well,
Did I
one of the
miss?
things is that we also, I've set up, Jake and I've set up a Substack, and Jake has been and
Okay,
really,
cool.
really turning on the faucet creativity wise by writing and doing these little doodles and stuff. But it is, I was just saying that Jake, we recorded a video where a friend of mine came back from Paris, and he got hit. He bought me a couple of early '90s Mattel Orlons, and I was saying the same thing. Like, one of the things I always remembered the most, besides the great art and story in Savage Sword of Conan, were all those articles inside that were helping you
Yep, absolutely.
dig deeper into Robert E. Howard, and why Red Sonja is not really connected, and was it's just so we're a
Right.
little bit on that pulse, but I thank you for saying that out loud. So thank you very much.
But yeah, yeah, I think it would be good. I think it would help connect more of an audience that would at least recognize it right
Yeah,
away, and then give you a chance to open it up and flip through.
nice. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we have that subliminally, but maybe we could make that a little bit more pronounced. I mean, I think once we see the main protagonist for the six issue graphic novel, it's going to be this character
Great.
called the Unbeknownst One. Then people might compare him to Humongous from Road
Okay.
Warrior.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, stuff like that, yeah. And I do think about like keep coming back to pit fights too, because you can we have the nowadays, and then the backstory, the flashback going back. But that's our
All
cross
right.
to bear, how to
Yeah,
make
yeah.
stuff.
Cool.
And it was really, really great talking to you. Can't wait to follow up next time with you, Tom.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on, and glad I could put some of my thoughts out
Thank
there.
you. Thank you so much, Tom. And I just want to end by saying, if you haven't gone to your local comic book store, go. And
Yep.
hopefully, you're going to get engaged with somebody that's half as engaged as Tom is, because it's really what those places should be all about. So, Tom, once again, thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you. Take care.